Hello, my name is Pat O'Malley, and I did my presentation on the campaign of Call of Duty Black Ops. So, what exactly happens in this campaign? This is a little short summary to prepare you for what's going to come. The game sets us off with us playing as Alex Mason. He is a CIA agent during the Cold War in the 1960s against communism. Throughout the campaign, we travel through many different countries such as Cuba and Vietnam. Our basic missions are really to stop communication towers between the Viet Cong and the communists for chemical warfare against the United States. The first operation that we are set on is Operation 40 in Cuba during the Bay of Pigs in 1961. Our main mission was the assassination to kill Fidel Castro. Throughout the mission, you go on execute some men and make your way to a man that looks like him, and you kill him. And after celebrating a little bit, eventually another army storms you and the Cuban rebels. And it turns out that you had killed a second Fidel Castro, not the real one. Later on, we were captured by Fidel Castro and sent to the gulags as a prisoner of war. It is here, if you slip to the next slide, where we meet Viktor Reznov, who was a World War II veteran of the Red Army. The two of them really got together, became really good friends, and they eventually plotted to destroy the communists who had thrown them in there. But before we do that, we connect through Reznov's story of how he managed to end up in the Gulag. We flash back to 1945 where we get to play as him, which calls back to another game, Call of Duty World at War, where he goes to kill a scientist in the Arctic that is held by a Nazi regime. He's eventually bombarded by Nova 6 gas, which kills his platoon, and he is eventually captured. Getting back to it, though, Reznov and Agent Mason really kicked it off, and one night in the prison, the Gulag, Reznov was able to distract a couple of the guards long enough for Mason to escape. Mason makes his way through the Soviet Union, gets back home, and eventually gets a meeting with President Kennedy to plot for the assassination of Dragovich, who is the man who had thrown him into the Gulag. They're eventually sent to a Soviet space camp back in the Soviet Union, and they're able to kill all the members of the Nazi Ascension, which is one of the Nazi projects that was going on in the game. They're able to destroy the secret spacecraft they were creating, and they eventually kill Dragovich in his car. Later on, a couple years forward, Agent Mason is sent to Vietnam to go rescue a platoon who is surprisingly directed by Reznov against the North Vietnamese. Alex and Reznov are really sent to stop Nova 6 getting from the Soviets to the Viet Cong at the time. One of the scenes, they're able to stop a plane from getting a shipment, but the Viet Cong were still able to recover some of the equipment. Later on, through their travels through Vietnam, Mason and Reznov make their way through North Vietnam to make their way to Steiner, who was a scientist who was making this chemical. They both make all the way to him and are able to kill him, but what they didn't realize is that he set off the order for all of his plants, like in quotations plants, I'd call them that, in the United States that were going to set off the bombs of Nova 6. But eventually, JFK is assassinated before he is able to nuke the Soviet Union, and the bombs didn't go off. Weird ending, but why it connects to war literature. Over the course of the years, I said in the slide, like, we've really been studying Vietnam and the accounts that are really in those stories, what they witnessed, how they feel after, how traumatizing war really is and what it can do to a person. And I also think that's interesting, the accounts that they made during the war, the friendships they had and, like, who they choose to kill and not to kill. I really think Reznov and Agent Mason's like relationship, like that really embodies like, getting past the fact of like who's really the enemy. It's really just two governments, but like we're still people, and at the end of the day, they were still mad at the same person, and getting over the fact that there were enemies in World War II, they were able to stop the communist regime.